We've had the chance to work with Amazon over the last 9 months now, and I will easily say, like, once you get under the hood and work with a team, working with Maiken, like, one of the most impressive corporate innovation and corporate sustainability teams that I've ever seen. So with that, I'm going to introduce Maiken Mullen Hansen. She is a longtime Amazon leader, 15 years within the device and hardware operations, technical advisor to the former SVP of Amazon Devices and Services, head of product and growth engineering for Alexa Mobile, integral role into the development of Fire TV, and now you lead sustainability efforts across Amazon's devices and services. So I think the fundamental of the role is like ensuring that the millions and millions of devices, massive supply chains across Amazon's devices meet the net zero carbon by 2040 as part of the climate pledge. So just one quick welcome for Maiken. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Garrett, for the warm welcome.
Definitely. So I think one of the things that at least we see kind of as part of our collaboration is like how ingrained sustainability is into everything that you guys do. Like how has that become a fundamental part of the devices strategy? How did that come about?
Yeah, I would say it really is foundational to everything we do at Amazon. As Garrett mentioned, I've been with Amazon for a really long time, and I think throughout our early growth phase, I think it was very apparent to us that we were increasingly having a really large impact on the societies we operate in. But there was a pivotal moment around 2019 when we co-founded with Global Optimism what is called the Climate Pledge. Garrett talked about it a little bit, but essentially it's a commitment to get to net zero by 2040, so 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement. It is a public commitment that we encourage and welcome other companies to join us in. We just announced this week that we have over 600 signatories, so over 600 other companies agree with us that this is a priority and that we should try to accelerate that journey. So that was kind of a big moment for us. And the way we then go about executing against that commitment internally at Amazon is that every one of our business unit, and you can think of a business unit as AWS as a business unit, or our retail shopping wing as a business unit, or in my case, the devices business unit, right? In devices we make the Kindle readers, the Fire Sticks, the Ring doorbells. But every business unit has a leader such as myself who is single-threadedly focused on meeting that goal of being net zero by 2040. So that's all I think about from when I get up in the morning until I go to bed is like, how are we gonna get there? And so I will say, we've been on this journey since 2019, as said, and one of the things that is fun, being a couple of years in, is that we're beginning to see some of our early efforts come to fruition. So one of the things we did, very close to what was just talked about on the energy space, right? We decided that we should take responsibility for the electricity used by our devices in customer homes. So we were the first CE company to make that commitment. And so as of last year, we're matching the electricity used by Fire TV, Echo, and Ring in all customer homes with investment in renewable energy. So I'm super proud that we've achieved that. And so we're excited about many more wins in the future.
It's incredible. I think we have some other large corporations in the room, startups. Not everybody thinks that way. Nobody has gone that far, and I'm like at times dumbfounded by the depth that you guys go to understand this. Like, how has that overall shaped your approach on finding new technology, integrating it, and choosing kind of what technologies to invest in and what to bring into scale?
Yeah, I would say, one more thing about the Climate Pledge is that as a signatory, you are beholden to a very simple 3-part framework. So first part of that framework is you commit to measuring and reporting where you stand on your carbon emissions. The second part, which is where we're going to get to your question, is you commit to taking action to eliminate your emissions, right, to implement abatement levers. And then there's a third part where it's like for anything you cannot abate, you want to buy credible carbon offsets. And so the way that we operationalize that within our business unit is I have a team of PhD level scientists that do process-based life cycle assessments for all of our process and calculate our carbon footprint, right? And what's great about that is that it gives us pretty high confidence that we have good values for that we actually know where we stand. But the other thing that's great about that is that it shows us where our carbon hotspots are, on a per product line basis. So I might know that like for my Kindles, batteries are a challenge, my Echo Shows, maybe it's displays and so forth. And so armed with that knowledge, we can kind of now go out the other part of the team and figure out, well, how do we drive down those emissions? And there are many ways to slice and dice any team's roadmap, but one way we do it is, I think, as I mentioned before, there are some levers we know work at this point. So we have low power mode on 71% of our devices in the field. There's no reason that shouldn't be 99.9%, right? So I'm not saying that's an easy problem to implement. It's still a lot of engineering, but it's an understood thing that we just have to do more of. But then the other part of what we have to do, right, because even if you sort of add up all those well understood decarbonization levers, we're not quite at zero, is we really have to innovate. And so another thing I spend a lot of time is like, how can we really place as many innovation bets as possible at any point in time? And so that's why we are just super excited when we're in a building like this today, because I see, 74 potential solutions to my carbon problems right in this building, and just get really excited about that.
So you'll probably get more than 74 pitches today when you walk around. There's also hundreds of other founders around. Like, what is separating successful pitches from ones that are falling short, right? And especially from the eyes of Amazon and the eyes of how you're thinking about it from sustainability and devices.
I feel like your conversation with Tom earlier set us up really well for this question, right? Because yes, we obsess over getting to net zero at Amazon. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, we also obsess over customers, our product, and we're a for-profit company, right? So we want these decarbonization solutions, but they have to make sense. They have to be commercially viable. And so where it gets challenging for us is that if we see a pitch, but we can't really, it's like, oh, this technology looks interesting, but we can't really squint at how do we scale it, right, to just match the demand we're going to have in terms of how much we're going to want to buy from you, but also in terms of getting the price of your solution into something that makes it viable for us, right? Like we also build pretty low margin products. So those are the two things that I'm always like looking for in pitches, and sometimes we see them and sometimes we don't.
So I'll even step back. Let's step back one half step. Like, how do they even get discovered, right? Like, how are you guys finding companies? How would you get your foot in the door at a very large company like Amazon?
Yes, I totally recognize that can be a challenge too. I've had many conversations throughout Climate Week with various people who was like, oh, well, how do we do that and how has it happened in the past? I would say it can be a little bit haphazard. We do have a couple of investment funds. We have a Climate Pledge Investment Fund that does some prospecting, an Alexa fund and so forth. But I would also say, sometimes it's just people reaching out to connections. What we wanted to do within devices was essentially getting a little more structured around it. And so that's why, I'm here today to talk about our accelerator program, because we figured we can provide more structure around this process.
So, and when we first started talking and started hearing about how you wanted to approach the Amazon devices and sustainability accelerator, like, can you just tell me about like how you guys are thinking about it, how it works?
Yeah, totally. So, when we started thinking about actually exactly what you were alluding to now, right? Like there are all these like opportunities out there that we're probably missing, or they're getting pitched to us in ways where we can't really, fully read them and appreciate them. We're like, well, what are actually thinking about our accelerator as a product, right? What are the tough problems we have to solve? And we recognize that there's discovery, but there's also this aspect of we really have to find a way to make sure that the companies we talk to speak a language that's going to be understood by Amazonians, right? Like especially the people inside Amazon who are the decision makers who are able to write the checks, right? Like I want to be very clear. We are in the business of writing checks whenever we can. And so what we created was this accelerator program for, we call it our Amazon Devices Climate Tech Accelerator. So it's all about technology we want to integrate and possibly could integrate into our devices. And we kicked it off this spring. Super fun. We're excited to see what was going to happen. We ended up having hundreds of applications from all over the world. We ended up selecting 14 companies out of that, who then came to San Francisco to join us for a boot camp. And in that boot camp, we focused on two things. First, we wanted to make sure that our selected companies were super familiar with our portfolio of devices, right? As I mentioned, it does span pretty wide. It's everything from the Ring cameras to the Kindle readers to the Fire Sticks, and these days also the Kuiper low Earth orbit satellites. So when we say devices, it's pretty broad. But then the other thing we also spent a lot of time on, right, was sort of really bringing these cohort companies up to speed on what we call our working backwards process, right? This is where we teach you the language we speak internally, which is anchored in this concept that we start everything with a press release. So we call it a PR FAQ document. We're a written word culture. And so basically any Amazon pitch internally looks like a 6-page written narrative where you start with a press release and then there's a number of frequently asked questions, and it's a little bit quirky. I know we're not the only company doing it these days, but it can take some getting used to. So we spend a lot of time with the companies really teaching them how it works. And then we kind of sent them off to go work on a PR FAQ for 5 weeks and come back to us and pitch.
So we've been deep in this, and like many people hear the word accelerator, and there's a lot of people doing accelerators around the world, and it's they're interesting. Sometimes they end with a demo day. It's like everybody, I don't know, throws confetti in the air, whatever it is. Like this is like real work. Like you guys are throwing companies that have just met you into the integration pipeline and finding buyers, and like gotten to a set of 8 companies that out of this process like have a very high potential into this next phase to like really get into the process. So I'd be curious, like tell me some of the outcomes and technology companies that we got them up here. Yeah, there you go. Some of the 8 companies that we're working with and kind of what you see as the outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is actually something I'm excited to announce today. So out of our 14 entrants into the cohort, these are the 8 companies we've selected through a pitch event we did in Seattle a couple weeks ago, and super excited to see these 4 graduate to the final phase of the accelerator. And we have some of them in the room right now. I see some in front. They are all upstairs right behind these windows, so definitely go check out what they're looking to invent for us. But yeah, so these technologies, they actually are very representative of what we are looking for, right? So I said we want to write checks, but they really represent these carbon hotspots that we're trying to tackle. So you'll see things around batteries, you'll see materials, you will see, things we might use for heat sinks. All of these things that are ingredients into our devices that will help us solve our decarbonization challenge. So super excited about where we landed. These all represent really great opportunities for us.
And even the amount of work that Amazon is putting in to really understand and evaluate these companies and help them. So thinking about the things you mentioned before around how do you scale from a few thousand units to multi-thousands? How do you find the right buyers internally? How do you really influence your suppliers that need to integrate these technologies? And really that amount of work I've never seen in this type of program that gives me tremendous confidence that like can look up on screen and not guarantee, but likely one of these companies being inside of an Amazon product in the product pipeline very soon, which is at least one, if not multiple on the screen, which is really exciting. As we aim kind of into your program next year and kind of as you iterate and scale and kind of understand and how this goes, like what would be your call to action for where you want more representation or more types of technologies for next year's effort?
Yeah, so first off, I think we also have a QR code for an interest list somewhere where folks can sign up. So please, if you think you might be a candidate for our next cohort, please do join our interest list. I said everything we do is so driven by our data, and so there are certain carbon hotspots that just continue to be high priority for us. The 2 I'm going to stress are printed circuit boards as well as display technology. These are just areas within electronics where there just hasn't been a lot of innovation over the last 20 years as far as like decarbonization and really making those aspects of consumer electronics more sustainable. So, we have a full list of things we are interested in, but if I were to highlight 2, like definitely please come get in touch with us if you're working on PCBs and or displays.
Fantastic. And that's the tip of the iceberg too. There's a lot. So I would say like, as you've started working with lots of these companies, these ones as well as in your past, like what are some of the misconceptions that you often see from maybe the outside world, investors, corporations, as you have a unique perspective from working with them at Amazon?
Yeah, I would say, at Amazon, we do like taking big bets, right? Like we do it with our own bets internally as well. Like if you think about something like the Kuiper satellite constellation, that's a pretty big bet. And so what we sometimes see is this tendency to get a little bit too focused on the probability of success versus the magnitude of the potential positive outcome, right? So sometimes people are like, oh, I'm going to build this app. There's a 70% chance that it's going to succeed, but then I'm going to have 1,000 customers. So it's like, okay, great. I'm on a path to success, but it's just not going to be that meaningful. Whereas sometimes, especially when you work on these hard tech things, it's like, well, maybe there's only a 10% chance of success, but if I do succeed with my, I'm going to mention one of my dreams, the compostable printed circuit board, it's going to be in every consumer electronic all over the globe, right? So my success is going to be gigantic. And so I think it's important to be willing to take those bets and also work on some of those things where it's like maybe the probability of succeeding is not that high, but the magnitude of like what you can achieve if you do succeed is just enormous.
And a quick follow-on to that, like, is there any things that you've learned as building out? What advice would you give? You've learned a lot in building these processes and learning these things. Is there any specific advice you give to them of like things you've learned that could help make them more sustainable internally?
Well, first I would say just generic, figure out how to pilot and failing fast. I mean, I think that can be challenging, especially with hard tech, but it's like you're really not gonna, you have to start the process of learning as quickly as you can. That's also something we talk a lot about internally is like, how can we validate our hypothesis as quickly as possible? And then the other thing I would say on the topic of sustainability in particular, I'm gonna go back to the Climate Pledge one more time. If you go look up the Climate Pledge website, there's a ton of resources. There's a ton of frameworks, tools, webinars, all sorts of things that will really provide education around decarbonization and how to calculate carbon footprints. You can join networks of other companies and so forth to really learn from each other. And so I think if any company is early on that journey, including startups, I would check out those resources. They're pretty valuable.
Fantastic. And I would even say, so I don't know, I know there's future founders in the room, maybe in their next company or the one they're about to start. What advice, especially in this world like manufacturing and supply chains and like big scary systems that are changing every day, like any advice you'd give to a startup that's about to go into these very traditionally difficult sectors to manage and maintain that you'd want to push them to, and maybe they'll join the accelerator in a couple years, but where would you start them out now?
Well, I was about to say, joining the accelerator is a great idea, right? Like we can help you navigate and scale some of those tough aspects of the journey for sure.
What are some of the things that you see, let's say from a manufacturing and supply chain operations, like what are some of the advice that you'd almost point people to start from right away? Like,
yeah, I mean, really think about like, how are you going to scale up? I think what sometimes surprises companies we talk to, especially startups, is just the magnitude of the Amazon machine, right? Like I will have companies come to me and they're like, hey, we're doing this great thing. I can supply you with enough parts or materials for 10,000 devices. Well, my challenge is I ship dozens of millions of devices per year, right? And so this is where I really need to be able to squint of like, how are you gonna scale up production? So do you have enough? Have you already established a way to secure enough raw material? That might be the first challenge you have, right? Like, who is going to do the manufacturing for you? Like, what is that going to cost? And can you do that in a cost-effective way? So those are the kind of things I would start looking at and thinking about, and especially, as you enter the accelerator and talk to us, because those are going to be some of our first questions.
All right, we got one more minute. I think one question that's not on here, that I asked Tom, is a year from now, like what seems obvious to you now that will be obvious to everybody else in a year, and we'll be either celebrating it or understanding it a year from now?
Well, I would say two things. I do think I agree 100% with many of the points that Tom made in terms of like market economics are driving a lot of things. Like it's easy to be very doom and gloomy right now, but if you look at like how market economics have taken over, right? He mentioned like 93% of all energy projects in the works are renewable. Like that just speaks for itself, and I think we're just going to see more of that. I also have a personal passion for batteries. So this last panel, I think we're going to see a lot more batteries. I think it's sort of, whenever I think about energy, to me it's crazy that if you think about compared to water, we've had like water reservoirs and city tanks forever, but it's like for energy, you know, we've been sort of missing this in-between storage step for a long time, and especially in a world with volatility, not just driven by renewables, but by the aging grid, by more demand and so forth. I think batteries are a critical resource and solution. So I think we're going to see more of those. Amazing.
I can't wait. And so one last request for everybody here. There are companies here that are actively working with Amazon in the program. Like, go talk to them. Like, you'll hear about what it means to work with Amazon, what it's like, what are the things they've learned, and bring those insights into your company. Because I'll say it again, like, probably the most impressed I've ever been with any corporation on the level of maturity, thoughtfulness, data, understanding around sustainability. And it should be a beacon for what other investors, corporations, and governments aspire to. So just advocate, like, spend time with the company, spend time with Amazon, because they're doing some objectively incredible things that aren't seen every day. So with that, thank you again for being here and being part of this.
And I would say, you know, if I could stress one last thing, so I would second what Garrett said. Please go talk to our cohort about their experience, because we really are in that business of wanting to write the big checks. So please bring us what you got. Like, we are the ones that, you know, as Tom mentioned, we have the money, we want to spend it, and so please, you know, show us what you got. Join our next cohort, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Great, thank you again.